want you to hit me as hard as you can.
You're walking away from history? History? Did Chris Columbus say he wanted to stay home? No. What if the Wright brothers thought that only birds should fly?
Listen, Centauri, I'm not any of those guys. I'm a kid from a trailer park.
If that's what you think, then that's all you'll ever be.
Greetings, Starfighter. Welcome to the best movie you never saw, where this week we dive into one of the most revered cult classics of the 1980s, The Last Starfighter. Released in 1985, 1 year after Return of the Jedi closed out the original Star Wars trilogy, The Last Starfighter was one of the first feature films to use CGI special effects for the majority of spaceships, plus environments and battle sequences. Along with Tron in 1982, The Last Starfighter is widely regarded as ushering in a new wave of science fiction visuals that changed the way movies looked forever. It also influenced everything from video games to books, especially Ready Player One author Ernie Cline, whose novel Armada was eerily similar. While we have long awaited a sequel, as well as the promised arcade version teased in the end credits, let's look back at this awesome movie from long, long ago in a decade far, far away.
This is it. Here we go.
While generally well regarded by critics, The Last Starfighter was, admittedly, a financial disappointment for Universal, grossing only $28 million domestically against a $15 million budget. Not a disaster, but not a hit either. Developed to ride the Star Wars bandwagon, The Last Starfighter follows a pretty basic premise. Teen video game phenom is recruited to pilot spacecraft thanks to his skills playing an arcade game that is actually a recruitment tool for an intergalactic army.
I've seen him come and I've seen him go, but you're the best, my boy. Dazzling. Light years ahead of the competition, which is why Centauri is here. He's got a little proposition for you.
Written by Jonathan Butel, whose only other credits are the 1985 sci-fi comedy My Science Project and the unspeakably terrible 1995 Whoopi Goldberg flop Theodore Rex, Butel got the idea for the film while working as a cab driver and after reading the classic Arthurian book The Once and Future King by T.H. White. He then visited an arcade and thought, what if The Sword in the Stone were a video game? The Last Starfighter was directed by Nick Castle, the Shape himself. That's right, the original actor to play Michael Myers in John Carpenter's Halloween directed The Last Starfighter. Castle would actually go on to helm a couple of other notable 1980s movies, namely the 1986 fantasy drama The Boy Who Could Fly, a film which I loved over and over again, and has that great scene where Fred Savage gets back at his bullies by shooting them with water guns full of piss.
There ain't no water in this gun.
So, what's in it?
Piss.
And 1989's Gregory Hines drama, Tap. Castle hand-selected many of the cast and crew of the film, namely star Lance Guest. Castle first came across the young actor after seeing him during editing sessions for Halloween 2. Castle then asked his friend and fellow filmmaker John Carpenter about Guest, as he felt he had the approachable everyman quality of matinee idol like James Stewart and Gary Cooper. Castle also included other Halloween franchise alums, including Dan O'Herlihy, who played Connell Cochran in the amazing Halloween season of The Witch. Castle also cast the great Robert Preston as Centauri, who would turn out to be the famed actor's final big screen role before his death. Castle called Preston's casting one of the greatest pieces of casting of the 1980s, and he was right. He referred to Preston's performance as the Music Man in Space, a reference to one of the actor's most famous roles. Indeed, that's exactly what it is. Robert Preston is incredible in this movie. Castle looked at The Last Starfighter as a classic musical, but without the music, lending to the over-the-top and theatrical style of the film. Castle also included Catherine Mary Stewart as Maggie. The role of Zur was originally offered to Robin Williams, who turned it down, paving the way for Norman Snow's casting. Star Trek and geek icon Will Wheaton can be seen in the film, although his speaking role was cut from the final edit. Castle was also deliberate in his selection of several crew members, including composer Craig Saffin, who ended up composing one of the best themes of the 1980s with Rima Williams' The Adventure Begins. Safin's goal with the score for The Last Starfighter was, in his words, to go bigger than Star Wars, which resulted in his use of a massive orchestra with quadruple the number of woodwinds, as well as 8 trumpets and assorted horns. The score remains one of the most memorable from the era, and odds are you may not even realize you know the main theme song. Thank you for watching JoBlo videos. If you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now, like this video, and click on the bell so you'll be notified each time a new video goes up. Now, back to the show. Having worked with John Carpenter on Dark Star and Dan O'Bannon on Alien, special effects expert Ron Cobb took a risk in relying heavily on computer graphics, saying the film could have ended up looking like Gumby in outer space. Cobb has been quoted as being critical of some of the finished effects, saying the landscapes in some scenes look like melted ice cream due to budgetary limits. Cobb also helped design the Rylans to appear cat-like with lighter colors for a more heroic look, while the Kodans were made to look satanic with horns on their faces as well as their ships. The character of Grig was made to look lizard-like, which forced actor Dan O'Herlihy to make exaggerated facial expressions under the heavy prosthetics. Cobb also designed Centauri's Star Car, one of the most iconic vehicles of the decade. A physical car was built over a Volkswagen engine covered with sheet metal. It didn't move fast and was very loud. They augmented this with audio sound effects. The CGI shots of the car were some of the most advanced ever made, and was also the first time motion blurring was used in a feature film, as seen when the car descends to the planet Rylos. Cobb reused some old designs of his from Alien in the Zandozan assassin spaceship seen in the film, a concept projected during the concept stage of Ridley Scott's 1979 production. Fun fact, Ron Cobb was originally selected to design another iconic sci-fi vehicle, this time the Time Machine in Back to the Future.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
In regards to the film's similarities with other 1980s directing icons, Castle said, "You basically back into George Lucas and Steven Spielberg at every corner. You see all these moments come up and you realize, boy, George really knew what he was doing."
I think George Lucas gonna sue somebody.
In trying to distance this film from those directors, the most noticeable change is the setting. Early drafts of The Last Starfighter had the film set in the suburbs, but Castle shifted it to a trailer park to avoid comparisons to E.T., Close Encounters, and Poltergeist. Filmed in just 40 days and mostly at night, test audiences responded positively to the character of Beta Alex, the clone that stands in for the main character, where he is off saving the galaxy.
Hey, you look like me!
To be honest, the initial scenes of Beta Alex's body and metamorphosis freaked me the hell out as a kid and remain a nightmarish image to this day. But audiences loved the humor this clumsy clone brought to the film, which resulted in reshoots to add more scenes. Lance Guest had to wear a wig and heavy makeup during reshoots due to an illness he had after production initially wrapped. The reason audiences warmed to The Last Starfighter is due to the film's combination of space opera and the average human becoming an intergalactic hero.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
While Luke Skywalker was a farm boy who blew up the Death Star, he was descended from a line of powerful beings and had the Force. In this movie, Alex is just really good at video games. For any kid coming of age in the 1980s, that was their bread and butter. I, for one, know I played every video game after seeing this movie under the impression that maybe, just maybe, I might unlock the right high score to become a starfighter of my own. But it never happened. The movie doesn't tread into heavy territory as far as plot goes. The narrative is as thinly drawn as possible in order to tell the story. The most heavy lifting comes early as the various alien races, factions, and names have to be rattled off for us to remember. Names like Rylan's Star League, the Kodan Armada, Ambassador Enduran, Grig, Gunstar, and so many more, just as quirky as anything in Star Wars or Star Trek, but are also easily remembered and roll in the tongue. Well, I don't know, maybe not Ambassador Enduran. What really stands out is the most impressive space battles, which 4 decades later still hold up pretty well. The training that Alex undergoes is very reminiscent of everything from The Karate Kid to Star Wars, but it works thanks to the solid makeup effects on the alien characters. It also helps that Alex doesn't easily believe in what's going on around him, and it takes some time for him to warm up. It also works because of the great Catherine Mary Stewart. A stalwart in 1980s films like Night of the Comet and Weekend at Bernie's, Stewart was a crush-worthy actress who makes Maggie a believable love interest for Alex, as well as a solid female lead that wasn't just arm candy. Robert Preston's Centauri is also the best mentor character since Obi-Wan Kenobi, imbuing his character with enough swagger that even for a 64-year-old was pretty impressive. I will admit that for a PG-rated movie, there are some pretty scary moments that got me as a kid, especially when Centauri reveals his alien face for the first time. In hindsight, this and Beta Alex reveal were pretty tame compared to what we see in movies nowadays. Now, of course, The Last Starfighter was supposed to be a much bigger deal than it was. The end credits tease a real-life arcade cabinet with a playable version of the game Alex plays in the movie. Atari got as far as building the game as their first 3D arcade game and utilized the same controller as the first Star Wars arcade game. Once Atari executives saw the movie, the arcade game was scrapped due to their belief that the film would be a financial disappointment. Since 1984, The Last Starfighter has been adapted as an off-Broadway musical, a comic book miniseries, a novelization, a tabletop board game, as well as Atari and NES video games. Starting in 2008, development on a sequel had been bubbling, with everyone from Steven Spielberg to Seth Rogen wanting to make it happen. The closest we have gotten is Rogue One screenwriter Gary Whitta, who attempted a TV series, and a film sequel has been announced via Twitter. Challenges with rights to the property have been the main culprit for stalls, as Universal and Warner Brothers, who acquired Lorimar, the original producer, have been stuck at odds with each other. As of October 2020, Boutel and Whitta have claimed to have the rights back to The Last Starfighter, with a script in active development. So when the time comes, maybe we will see the return of the Kodan Armada and find another starfighter to take up the controls to save the universe. With so many 80s classics getting revivals or reboots, now may be the time to check out the original Last Starfighter. So grab your quarters and let's steady those gun sights for another massive interstellar battle.
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Yeah.